One of the Godzilla series' long-standing pride and joys is its music. Like other popular franchises, even if the movies themselves are lacking, the soundtracks more often than not deliver. What sets Godzilla apart is the eclectic nature of its scores. As with the films themselves, the music varies heavily in tone and style, all coming from a variety of talented composers. Most people are familiar with Akira Ifukube. He devised not only the iconic Godzilla March, but also tons of other recognizable music in several Toho Kaiju films, and even created Godzilla's roar and footsteps. I absolutely love Ifukube's body of work and his contributions to the franchise. However, for my money, there is one other composer who I think stands toe-to-toe with him in terms of excellence. Enter Michiru Oshima, who despite composing the scores for only 3 Godzilla movies in the early 2000s, has stood the test of time as a musician whose work rivals that of the monster music maestro himself. With that said, my title is a bit of a white lie. I said Michiru is my favorite Godzilla composer. I honestly can't decide who I prefer between her and Akira Ifukube, but this video needed a name, and rest assured, it is a close race. So let's dig deeper, explore Michiru's history with the Godzilla series, and elaborate on what makes her music so great. Born in Nagasaki, of all places, in 1961, Oshima's professional career began while she was attending the Kunitachi College of Music. It's worth noting while we're on her education that one of her fellow alumni is Joe Hisaishi, the resident composer on a lot of Hayao Miyazaki's films, so Michiru was in good company when it came to musical talent, it seems. Oshima's professional music career began while she was still attending Kunitachi. She released her own symphony titled Orasho, beginning her career as not only a composer of film, TV, and anime, but actual concerts, events, you name it. But none of that's super relevant to this video. Oshima's work on the Godzilla series began in 2000 when she was hired to compose the music for the 24th film in the official Toho series, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, directed by Masaki Tezuka. The film underperformed at the box office and was met with lackluster reviews, but one element that is consistently singled out for praise is the score. It was in this film that Oshima introduced her own theme for the King of the Monsters, which I can't play much of in this video at risk of it getting flagged, but all the best tracks I want to single out specifically, I'll link in its description. For now though, man, you gotta take my word for it, this theme is awesome. While Ifukube's March is easily more iconic, this one still does an amazing job at capturing everything Godzilla should be. Thunderous percussion depicts its size and power, while blaring horns channel its rage and vicious propensity for annihilating all that stands in its way. On top of that, Oshima makes the smart decision to actually use this theme a good amount of times over the course of the movie. All too often, you run across films that have a great original theme that really only gets used once or twice, maybe just in the opening or closing credits. Michiru, on the other hand, keeps the theme coming early and often. Wherever Godzilla goes, his motif follows, but never to the point that it becomes droning. Still, that's just the main theme. How's the rest of the music? Well, each of Oshima's outings have a bit of a different feel to them that's dependent on the tone of the movies they're representing. Godzilla vs. Megaguirus is a bit of an uneven film, not gonna lie. It doesn't always know exactly what it wants to be, but the consistent vibe I get is intensity. There are cues in this score that wouldn't feel out of place in a horror movie. Even the action cues put more emphasis on the thrilling suspense than any kind of sweeping grandiosity. A tall order, considering it's playing over scenes like this. Overall though, it's a good score, and probably Michiru's most unique out of the 3 she did. But I wouldn't say it's quite my favorite. While she did hit the ground running, Oshima still needed a little more time to fully perfect her sound. 2 years later, after the more favorable reception of the following G film, Oshima was invited back to the franchise for Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. GMK director Shusuke Kaneko did not return, leaving him a one-hit wonder for the franchise. Instead, GXMG was rehelmed by Masaki Tezuka, which is a little odd given his previous film's poor reception, but he pulled together for this outing and gave us what many consider one of the best Millennium Godzilla films. Oshima had a lot to do with that as far as I'm concerned, as for this installment she not only brought back the main theme from her previous film, but also composed new memorable material and helped give them the proper oomph they warranted. For the first time in the series' history, the soundtrack for this film was recorded outside of Japan. Konstantin D. Kremitz conducted the Moscow Symphony Orchestra, and the recording imbued this soundtrack with a towering size deserving of such titanic monsters. The drums especially sound much better here. It just goes to show how far a great orchestral performance can go when doing the music justice. As for that music, Kiryu, this incarnation of Mechagodzilla, gets a new theme which easily stands shoulder to shoulder with the previous versions. Mechagodzilla as a character has always been treated well from a musical perspective, from the jazzy 70s theme to Kira Fukube's two more menacing turns, and finally this one, which sounds like Kiryu is being summoned into gladiatorial combat. But you know what? It really works. For easily the most heroic incarnation of the character, an appropriately bold leitmotif is definitely welcome. And like with Godzilla's theme in the last movie, they actually use Kiryu's theme a lot here. Every time it plays, you find yourself rooting for the machine dragon, and anything in a Godzilla movie that makes you root against Godzilla is quite a feat. Again, it makes me sad I can't play more of it in this video, but take my word for it, it's great. But who am I kidding? All the music in this movie is great. Everything from the sweeping opening titles to the more sensitive moments, but even those have a bit of pomp to them when compared to other installments. This is easily the most bombastic of the three scores in the video. Everything is big and epic and exciting, and while I do love that, I admit I can see why someone could take issue with it. As crazy as it sounds, there is room for subtlety in these movies, so to have music that doesn't leave much space for it could be irritating. But to be fair, it is very appropriate for the movie it accompanies. Part of the reason why Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is so good is that it's just so sure of itself. It knows it's basically a live-action anime, honestly more so than the actual Godzilla animes, and its pace and energy are reflected perfectly in the music. From the action, to the drama, to the final victory, or draw, whatever you'd call this, it is, beyond any doubt, my favorite Michiru Oshima Godzilla score. With that said, Tokyo S.O.S is pretty great too. I think of Godzilla Tokyo S.O.S's score as the perfect marriage between Michiru's previous two outings. The Moscow Symphony did not return for this movie, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it a tad, but I'd still say I prefer this recording to the Godzilla vs. Megaguirus one. Now that we have 3 monsters in this movie instead of 2, Michiru had her work cut out for her, creating a new theme for Mothra, new battle themes, all while retaining the connective tissue from her previous scores. And she did a fabulous job at that. The Mothra theme I especially want to highlight. When people think of Mothra's themes, they tend to imagine the actual in-universe song sung to her by the Shobijin, and rest assured, there is a version of that in this movie too, and a pretty damn good one at that. But there are also orchestral themes that fit very well with the character. Immediately springing to mind is Ifukube's Sacred Springs theme, or Kaotani's God of the Sea motif. I don't know if I'd call Mothra's theme here my favorite out of the lot, but it's still pretty good, and matches not only the character as a whole, but also this version of her as she exists in this Kiryu Saga timeline. It's sweeping and grand with an element of mourning as this imago, big shock, goes out in one of the most sorrowful ways we've seen. That's saying a lot. But that's just to build up the menace of how intimidating Godzilla is in this score. And I don't know, is it just me, or does the instrumentation sound more sinister than usual? They went a long way to make Godzilla sound scary here, which is impressive because he is kind of a bitch in this movie. He does hold the distinction of squaring off with Mechagodzilla with one of the best fighting themes in the franchise's history, and easily Michiru's best out of her 3 films. Though I must admit I'm also partial to the music where Godzilla fights Mothra from the same movie. So, 2 great fighting tracks for the price of 1. This woman really knows how to make Godzilla fighting insects more exciting than it ought to be. And the way she adapts her own music from the previous movies for this one and composites them with the new stuff is just so good. That's how you write music, not just for movies, but for sequels. Same, but different. I'd also say out of all the scores in this video, this one is the most Godzilla-y, in that it has some cues that sound like they're from a classic Godzilla movie, while the other 2 scores, they're still orchestral, definitely sounded more modern in their approach. This in part sounds like an Ifukube score, which is great, if that's what you're looking for. Considering this film is in canon with a lot of the Showa Kaiju films that Ifukube himself scored, it does act as an added dose of musical cohesion, which is appreciated. And while it's scaled back from the previous movie, this soundtrack still carries that bombastic touch that ties all these films together. Mostly the Kiryu films, but those are the ones in continuity with each other, so fuck off. Still, while they might not all be in the same timeline, they do form quite the satisfying musical trilogy of excellence. It's been 21 years since Michiru Oshima scored a Godzilla movie. Rest assured, she's been staying busy in the interim, but at the same time, I would be curious to see her return to the franchise one day. I don't think I'm alone in saying that she is the greatest living Godzilla composer, so I would definitely be ecstatic to hear of a new movie or show that has her involved. And even if you can't get her back, would it be too much to ask just to hear that kick-ass theme again? I mean, it was already used for 2 separate incarnations anyway. It's not like the GMK theme, which is intrinsically tied to that specific version of the character, and god, after how many times the Ifukube theme has been reworked, would it really be that big a stretch to use hers again? As for her other themes, they'd be harder to work in organically since they're a little more connected to certain versions of their characters. Megaguirus is such an obscure monster, we'd be lucky to even see her again in another movie, let alone hear her theme. Kiryu is my favorite Mechagodzilla, and likewise has my favorite Mechagodzilla theme, but again, it is most definitely Kiryu's theme, not just another Mechagodzilla's. Mothra's Tokyo S.O.S motif could work since it's more general, and Mothra's had so many themes already. I'm sure there'll be others, and this wasn't even necessarily my favorite, but I could stand hearing it again. But even if these themes are never heard again in a new piece of media, and if Michiru Oshima never returns to the Godzilla series, the results of her existing contributions speak for themselves. The Kiryu saga is regarded as one of the high points of the Godzilla franchise, and Godzilla vs. Megaguirus has its fans, I think. And a big reason people point to why they're so good is the music. You can listen to it by itself and have a great time, or get immersed in how well utilized they are in the movies. Either way, it stands the test of time. Thank you for watching, have a great day. Godzilla month continues, so until next time, see ya.